Hello, my name is Seth Maggard, and I would like to give you a brief overview of my childhood as it pertains to the physical, cognitive, and psychosocial domains of development. So I'd like to take a moment, just sit right there, and I'll tell you how I became a prince and how I learned to share. I was born on June 18th, 1986 in Montgomery, Alabama, and weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces. I was generally in good health from birth and maintained an average schedule of development from early on. I was the first child of a mother, Tracy, and father, Edward, with whom I was a welcome and planned product. This, I've learned, has a great deal of impact on lifelong development, as we will find out throughout this production. I was generally ahead or on schedule with physical development. My gross motor skills, which is the large head, arm, and leg movement, were developed quickly, and self-locomotion, or my personal movement, was off and running, pun intended. I was given an active environment with which to interact with often, and was encouraged by my parents to do so. Cognitively, I would summarize my experiences in mostly an information processing approach. This focuses on how I react to problems and solve them using memory and trial and error mechanisms. This photo is evidence of my early days as a baby racing champion. All autographs will be signed at a later time. I used movement, gross motor skills, and information processing through appropriate toys as my guides into my environments. My representational ability in the sixth substage of cognitive development presented my blossom into developing another aspect in early childhood, which is psychosocial. Per the textbook, which is A Child's World 13th edition, on page 216, it was in this domain that I began to develop my true personality, or a consistent blend of emotions, temperament, thought, and behavior that makes a person unique. According to the New York longitudinal study, I was an easy child that was very adaptive to new surroundings. From the age of 3 months, I was raised 70% of the time in formal paid child care. This presented a new problem-solving and social abilities, but also proved to be a slight hardship, as my mother says that I displayed a little separation anxiety, which is an adverse reaction to separating from my primary caregiver, throughout my first 3 years. At this stage, my self-concept was reliant on my parents and was very healthy. Consistent with the textbook, after age 3, I began to drop all signs of fat and took on a very tall and slender frame. Despite any worries my mother might have had that I was too slender, the doctors reassured her that this was normal and that my nutritional habits were on par. Along with other children my age, I showed a great deal of enuresis, which is occasional bedwetting, and short night terrors that may have been associated with my eating habits. Despite the professional appearance of myself in this photo, I was full-headed into the pre-operational stage of cognitive development in my early childhood years. I can remember that my memory was very well developed even in these years, as even today I can recall, through episodic memory, several events that impacted my childhood. Much to the chagrin of my parents, I developed language skills early on, as I was constantly in social environments and was very empathetic and vocal on my feelings, as well on social language situations. According to the text, my interactions with adults helped me to incorporate my early emergent literacy, as I read and wrote long before my cohorts. I was never introduced to any of the quantitative testing of intelligence as a child. Childcare helped me with my cause and effect reasoning. Despite my issues with normal concepts such as conservation, which is maintaining the amount or weight despite changes in appearance, or an identity, these are on page 279 of the textbook, I still remember being terrified on an early birthday because my father dressed up as a clown, and I was mortified and unable to understand that he was my father. My egocentrism would take a change, however, as my family welcomed my younger brother when I was 4 years old. This would be my only surviving sibling. Going off of this addition to the family, my psychosocial development would forever be impacted in my future activities. My family was mostly conservative and Southern, which means that I was gender typed from an early age. So, all of my activities, toys, possessions, clothes, and thoughts were corralled into a pre-made male model early on. I believe in a cognitive developmental theory when it comes to this development, that when a child learns which sex they are, They will adjust behaviors and act accordingly for the rest of time until acted upon by an outside force. I was disciplined with spankings and timeouts regularly. I enjoyed functional and constructive play sessions with Legos and art so that I could represent myself in my creations. I was given a great amount of autonomy and the ability to solve problems under the supervision of my authoritative parents that encouraged me from a young age. I maintained several female friends and included them in my play also along this stage of development. Due to my experiences in childcare, I believe that I was able to work through much of the play dilemmas earlier than proposed. One major impact on this area of development during this time is when my father passed away unexpectedly. This not only delved me into a mantra for my lifelong altruistic and empathetic behavior in caring for others, but it also shifted several social and disciplinary paradigms for me at a very early age. Such psychosocial impacts led me into middle childhood, where I began to develop into a taller and more slender frame and enjoyed formal sports and rough and tumble play with my school friends. I was continuously eating and led a very healthy life, which I now know is a blessing. Due to my athletic activities, my body image was very reinforced and impacted my other domains of development more than I knew. I was incredibly lucky not to suffer from any acute medical conditions that some of my friends did. I regularly visited a family doctor that was able to provide paramount care and observation as I grew throughout my childhood. Due to my father's death, I was also regularly seen by an individual psychotherapist. These sessions were very deep and failed to reach me as I was clinging to other aspects of life. Still, the sessions seemed to help my little brother and I cope with this transition period and other anxieties which may have potentially blossomed from it. It was because of the role that I felt that I must fulfill as the oldest male in the family that kept me in such good health and order. During these middle childhood years, I enjoyed great advances in cognitive development, and not wanting to let my mother down, I strove to maintain grades and set an example. Through school-led IQ testing, I was identified as a gifted student and enrolled in enrichment classes that tested my knowledge more and challenged me to learn on a constant basis. My reading and writing skills that are still paramount today began to blossom in this time frame. This also came from my metacognition, or the ability to analyze the process in which I learn and challenge myself to learn. This is on page 278 of the textbook. I mostly gravitated towards a visual-based retrieval system through my hobbies and skills in reading in order to retain information. This development dates back to early childhood when I showed signs of language and literacy from an early age. I began to understand through peer relationships a concept equal to Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, that a person could retain intelligence that didn't pertain to a specific field or accomplishment set. I gravitated towards friends that shared my particular intelligence, but learned that other children were no less capable because they didn't share my scholastic abilities. I guess there were interpersonal skills emerging even at this age. The psychological domain of development in middle childhood pivoted on the fact that I was among a large percentage of children that were raised by an extended and non-traditional family member part-time, that being my grandparents. Due to my father's death and my mother's work occupation, despite this fact, I still maintained good grades and a healthy social life. My self-esteem did begin to drop off as I internalized several aspects of bad experiences in my own life that were beyond my control. Looking back, I would have expected myself to be a little more resilient to coping with stress and disappointment due to my experiences with death early on, but I didn't know how to properly cope with stress and balance all aspects of life. I never really exhibited any aggression. However, whether it be instrumental to get what I wanted or hostile to hurt others because of this low self-esteem, none was exhibited throughout this stage in childhood. There is a great area of difference in one area that also deviates from an assumption in the text. My relationship with my brother was incredibly healthy and very rarely resulted in any aggression, competition, or bullying whatsoever. Moving into adolescence and puberty, I saw a great deal of weight gain as a result of my horrible internalizing habits, but decrease in physical activities in middle school. It wasn't until I started attending Prattville High School that I rediscovered my affection for athletics and reaped the benefits of a healthier appearance. I went through puberty at a normal age and rate. There wasn't much male support for me during this time, so self-navigation made for a turbulent and unsure time coming in this developmental stage. However, I did manage to make it through this trying time without adopting an eating disorder or trying any illegal substances at all. I am not in the general population that experiment with drugs and alcohol from the early age of 13. Due to my family obligations and my respect for authority, I stayed away from all of these substances. My physical changes in brain functionality and the development of my cortexes and gray matter also assisted in my cognitive development, my cognitive abilities, and the skills staying well above standard in adolescent years. At a later age, I was diagnosed with a Chiari-2 malformation, which is my brainstem growing into my spinal cord. This did not affect any of my gross motor skills, and I led a very normal life from this time. Schoolwork challenged my developing knowledge with deductive reasoning for arriving at conclusions from analysis. Procedural knowledge, such as driving a car and undergoing mature tasks, was also being tested on a consistent basis in every situation. My work experience dates back to 14 years of age when I began to problem solve and develop my personal codes of ethics and morality. Just as everyone else in adolescence, relationships on all levels intensified as I aged, and interactions with females assisted with laying a foundation for pre-conventional morality, or mandating my own decisions and deductions in situations, as it moved away from conventional procedures of morality in which I let others define my decisions in order to appeal to them. Psychosocial development is the capstone of my development in my childhood experiences, and the bridge which I connect my adult psyche and childhood lessons. My ability to create my identity out of experiences helped my identity achievement and selecting what I wanted to do after high school. My personal relationships impacted who I viewed myself as. Despite these intense personal relationships, my moral code kept me from any aggression or sexually transmitted infections from this early age. Many young adults aren't so lucky, and I count myself as extremely blessed. In late adolescence, I honestly didn't take too much of an active role in rebellion from any authority in my life. My mother raising my brother-in-law kept us in line and allowed our focus to be put on individuation and defining our roles as a unique person outside of our family rather than rebellion. I did distance from my sibling as time progressed through adolescence, just as the textbook suggests. At the age of 17 to 18, I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps in order to better achieve my identity and take part in a strict discipline routine. I think I felt that there was a void in that aspect and that I didn't need to go to college out of high school and allow myself to mature and take a thought-out approach to the rest of my life. This production has references that I used that were from A Child's World 13th edition. This is by Gabriella Martorell from McGraw-Hill Education. All supplemental information and photographs was provided by my mother, Tracy Maggard, who resides in Prattville, Alabama. This has been a brief presentation of my childhood development and the impact that 3 major domains had on it. I appreciate your time as well as your efforts and leadership throughout this semester. I hope to work with you again soon.